All right, welcome. Ton Tonight we're going to be talking about week 3 overview, and it's going to begin where we start putting together into our animation and then interactivity our infographic. So as far as announcements go, um, the learning coach Christy has posted her hours. You can see those and click on those and visit her. This might be a good week. If you haven't visited her yet, this might be a good week to begin. Tonight's agenda is we'll go over the overview and objectives for this week. We'll discuss briefly the readings and tools that are available to you. And then we'll focus on the discussion. And I really hope to help you find the code snippets that will help you with your animation, and you can add to your discussion post. And then we'll take a break, and during the second hour, we'll probably go into the second hour with our discussion on the code snippets that we find for our discussion. And so, but it'll be during the third hour that we will focus on the during the second hour that we'll focus on the assignment. So this week, we begin bringing our concept to life with creating our final assets for our self-promotional infographic. You probably have gotten your assets together regarding this, the images. If you haven't sized them, then this would be the time to make sure they're properly sized. I'm curious, we had discussed during last week, we talked about creating a design where you have square images or at least reusable images between your two designs. And I'm interested to know, what did you discover on that? Everybody who's here, tell me, what did you discover about reusing the same images between one design, your web desktop, and then your other file for your mobile design and that project file? So the question is your design allowing you to reuse the same sizes? So Melissa says yes. Good. It's very good that your design enabled you to do that. How about anybody else? So Eric, you did a little shrinking on your, okay, and Charlotte had to scale the mobile. Okay. So did you just do did you collapse it so that it collapsed, or did you crop them, have to crop them, or did you just shrink them and scale them? I'm just curious. Was cutting out some of the graphic involved, or did you find that shrinking them worked? Okay, so Eric and Charlotte both were able to scale. Okay, I was just curious about that part of the process. Okay, so our objectives this week: define and execute a good composition for our UI, UX and UI, and create high-level functionality with scripting to engage the end user. Basically, we're going to pretty much put the interactivity where we want it, and develop a script library for this and future animated projects. And if you recall, at the very beginning of the class, we talked about this script library, and I explained to you that the code snippets that Adobe Flash has, Adobe Animate has incorporated into their tool is in and of itself a script library of code. And it also, I made sure you were aware that it is a subset, at least the HTML5 Canvas JavaScript functions. Those are a subset of the larger code library, which is available, but not exposed, if you will, through those code snippets. And that's at createjs.com. That's the full library of JavaScript routines. And tonight, I trust and expect that we're going to be looking into that just a little bit with some of these samples that we've found on the internet, sample tutorials that you'll be talking about in discussion. ActionScript, which is the ActionScript 3.0 template files that you create. If you were to create those are the ones that generate the SWF files, and they are the ones that are dependent upon the Flash engine. Those have the full ActionScript built into them. And so the code snippet panel that comes up when it gives the option for ActionScript, that too is a subset of what's available in ActionScript. So in the same way that we're able to add some of the other function code from the larger library in HTML Canvas project files, likewise, you can do the same thing with ActionScript. So I'm interested, of those of you who are here, have you chosen to create your project file, which was last week's assignment, for your desktop? Did you choose the Canvas, the HTML5 Canvas project file, or did you choose the ActionScript 3.0 project file when you created it? So Melissa chose the HTML5 Canvas, and then so in Charlotte also. Okay, Eric did ActionScript. So Eric, can you share what made you go that direction with the ActionScript 3.0 project file instead of the HTML5 Canvas? Feel free to unmute yourself if you prefer not typing. Oh, no. Let me help you understand that. Both the HTML5 Canvas and the ActionScript 3.0, both of them have script in it, but the type of scripting is different. So just so you have a little background here, I'll help you understand. The Flash has always had built into it a scripting language, and it's called ActionScript. And several releases ago of Adobe Flash, it was ActionScript 1.0, and then a couple years later they enhanced it to be a more advanced language. It was more robust of its own library of code, and that became ActionScript 2.0. That came out with, I think, Adobe Flash 2011, if I'm not mistaken. And then ActionScript 3.0 came out a couple years ago, and that was built into, I believe, Adobe Flash 2013, but I think I'm wrong on that. We could look those up, but just so you know, the scripting language comes with the Adobe Flash development tool built into it. And but as you know, Steve Jobs, when I think I'm off by 2 years, so roll back, because about 2012, Steve Jobs, 2011, 2012, came out and said the Flash player is just too wieldy, it's buggy, it's resource heavy. We don't want to allow the Flash player to even run on our iPhone. And that triggered this huge reaction. So Adobe said, whoa, what are we going to do if we can't push out our Flash player onto the iPhone? And also, by the way, Steve Jobs wouldn't install the Flash player natively on his Macs that went out of the factory. He quit doing that too. You have to download and install it yourself. Part of the revolt from Apple against Adobe Flash. So Adobe thought, well, what are we going to do? One of the criticisms of Steve Jobs was, you're not open source. ActionScript is a proprietary language, and he was right. Proprietary means owned by a company, which was Adobe. And so that was one of the negative points that Steve Jobs pointed out about ActionScript. So rather than coming back and retaliating, instead, Adobe quit developing the Flash player for the mobile devices. That's why we have these other project files like Air for Android and Air for the iOS. It's because that's a different format than the SWF file format, which was dependent upon the Flash Player. So, and as far as the desktop goes, Adobe then went out and thought, okay, what can we do to solve this accusation, this criticism of our proprietary scripting language? What can we do? Well, HTML5 had developed to the point that it can begin by itself, do some of the things that Adobe Flash Player was doing with the Swift files. And CSS3 was also coming out at the same time. And all the browsers out there were picking up on this, HTML5 and CSS3. So the browsers in and of themselves were being able to process a very advanced HTML5 web page along with CSS3, and it was able to do some of the things that normally was only done by the Flash Player. So Adobe then decided to go, and they found Grant Skinner's company, and they found this Create.js big library, and they literally incorporated that open source library of code right into their Adobe Flash, now Adobe Animate tool, so that it can generate scripted animations and interactive animations with JavaScript instead of ActionScript. And so, but from the very beginning, if you want to do this interactivity with HTML5 and JavaScript, you have to choose that other project file, which is the Canvas, HTML5 Canvas file, because that project file, when you publish that one, that will create HTML5 and JavaScript. Whereas if you start with ActionScript 3.0 project file, that will not generate an HTML5 file and the JavaScript files that would come with it. That instead creates an SWF file. And the SWF file is dependent upon the Flash Player, which processes all the ActionScript coding that's built into that SWF file. So if you want interactivity, you can choose either of them. We advocate the HTML5 Canvas one just because that's the direction that Adobe is headed with they're supporting their ActionScript 3.0 developers because there's a lot out there, but at the same time, new things and interactivity and the opportunities exist with individuals who understand the JavaScript interactions, interactive function calls. There's just more opportunity that's growing. I think than the ActionScript. I'll show you a graph here. We'll go. Can you still hear me? So I had a little message on my screen there. One second. I just chatted if you can hear me. All right, so I wanted to show you why we favor the HTML5 Canvas. If you go to Indeed.com and scroll to the bottom, there's a link for trends. And ActionScript versus JavaScript. Look at the trends over the past 5 years, and you can see that JavaScript, although 2% of the jobs out there in the workplace have JavaScript as one of the requirements. Now it's gone down over the past 4 years, stabilizing at about 1.2. But if you compare it to ActionScript, relatively speaking, it is also going down. In fact, if we took off JavaScript and just looked at ActionScript, you'll see that it's reduced by 800% from 0.08 down to 0.01. So you can see that we are interested in teaching you JavaScript interactivity more than the ActionScript interactivity.
So that's why we favor encouraging you to use the HTML5 canvas, which allows you to do the JavaScript. So you can do interactivity with both, but we prefer the HTML5 canvas. So if you'd like, Eric, you can just, there's a way to import you watched the video last week. So are you, so I just encourage you to consider that. Yeah, copy and paste will work. If you watch that one video, it shows you how to do an import. That works too. All right, so now let's just focus. So let's just get back to the conversation here. I want to make sure I'm sharing what you can see. Oops. Oh, we got to go back. Okay, we were there, and we did this. And we went over the objectives. This is where we were. All right. So as you know, the project we're working on, self-promotional infographic, deploy it to be viewed on the internet and mobile devices. So here are the readings for this week. And there's a Linda, oops, that's funny. That wasn't my mouse. That was my touchpad that did that. I think I pushed forward on it. So there is a lynda.com link in the readings and tools. And there is the example there. Now this one is using the ActionScript 3.0. So that's one thing that's kind of a caveat here. There are so many Adobe Flash ActionScript 3.0 examples out there. It's because that's all that, for the past 10 or 15 years, that's all that Adobe had. And so, so right now you'll find a lot out there. In fact, the examples that I went over in the first day of class, you remember there are several ActionScript examples and just one or two JavaScript. And so we have to realize that's going on so that don't get discouraged by that, but just keep in mind. So lynda.com even is impacted by the same thing. All their instructors out there have been teaching ActionScript 3.0 for the past several years. So we're in transition right now, and there's not as much material on Adobe Flash or Adobe Animate programming with JavaScript as there is for the Adobe Flash ActionScript. But don't get too discouraged by that, because we're trying to lead in the same direction Adobe's going, which is JavaScript based. You'll be glad that you have JavaScript on your resume rather than ActionScript, because in the long run, that's the interactive language that UI developers use, and it will tie into even web development, because the output from Adobe Animate is HTML5 and JavaScript, which also happens to be the interactive language for websites. So when you create HTML5 websites and put interactivity into it, guess what scripting language you use? JavaScript. So obviously those websites aren't probably generated by an HTML by Adobe Animate, but at least you'll be talking the same language. So, which is JavaScript. So that's another positive. Yeah, if you read further, additional videos will show you how to convert AS3 to HTML5 canvas. The only negative about that process is obviously Adobe Flash or Adobe Animate will not convert ActionScript 3.0 scripting to JavaScript scripting. That's the part that's going to be missed. And so it'll comment that out when it does the import. And then you have to then rewrite the JavaScript code. But luckily, Eric, you haven't yet started the animation, and so it's not like you've had to waste. You haven't put any effort in yet, because this week is the week we're going to be focusing on interactivity anyway. So I think you're good. Okay. So then there's this one here about various updates to the Animate Professional Creative Cloud. And then we'll talk about discussion. Before I get on to that, everybody, okay, good. You did that. Okay. Yeah, you would have to open up, create the HTML5 Canvas document, and then do an import of the ActionScript 3.0 Adobe Flash file. Okay. So, all right, let's talk about the discussion. Many designers don't have the time or even the ability to write JavaScript code from scratch. Even developers that do know how to create functionality with JavaScript from scratch build a snippet library to refer back to for future projects. In this discussion, you will research sites that provide snippets that you can use in your infographic as well as future projects. For this discussion, you will research sources for JavaScript code snippet tutorials that are not already in Animate, formerly Flash interface like GoTo and Play. So remember how I told you that we get a subset. So we're going to focus on the other ones that are found. So in the classroom, I'll show you. Can you see, what do you see on the screen right now? Google. Okay, good. I'm sharing this at the right screen. Well, I'm waiting for that to come up. Isn't that amazing, this downfall? Look at that. The downfall of Adobe Flash Player, because ActionScript is dependent upon that. The Flash Player and while we're waiting for it's come up. Oh, waiting for that to come up. While I'm waiting for that to come up, I'll show you some more trends. Here's some more trends to compare. The one on top is JavaScript. Isn't that interesting that there's more JavaScript jobs out there than there are CSS? Let me add HTML in here, just generic HTML, see what we get with that. I'm going to do two things at once. Okay, so the orange is JavaScript. The purple is regular HTML. So slightly larger demand for regular JavaScript than HTML coding. CSS is right up there. This is a percentage of all jobs on the market, of all industries, not just technical jobs. This is of all jobs available out there. 2% of them reference the term JavaScript in it. And then here, the HTML5, you can see it's grown. It's doubled, 0.2 to 0.5. And then here is a CSS3. It too has a similar path from 0.1 to 0.2. If you just look at these two right here, this is referring to the latest release of HTML5 and CSS3. So this is quite interesting because this is the release of the HTML5 and CSS3 that was able to do what much of what Flash did. The fact that we have the JavaScript routines was kind of JavaScript has always been around. The libraries of routines have been around, but this here is what enabled Adobe Flash to go away. Really, is the fact that HTML5 and CSS3 had animation built into it, had the canvas element. Remember, HTML5 included the canvas element, which really became the drawing board for browsers to be able to render animations and dynamic objects. And so HTML5 Canvas had that in it. CSS3 also went hand in hand. So that's what's going on. You can see it's kind of stabilized here over the past 2.5 years. I would say flattened out. So so that's interesting that it hasn't continued to grow at the same pace. But this is now what our curriculum is teaching you. This class is going to be focused on the JavaScript. Other classes in your web development will focus on HTML5 and CSS3. My connection seems very slow. Not sure why. I'm sitting right next to the router. Is everybody hearing me okay? Okay. Can you see on your own, Dan? I want to make sure the website Canvas is up for you. It's just taking forever to load. Hmm. Hmm. Class. The dashboard came up, but the class is just not coming up. Now, can you check on your own computer? Can you attempt to do this on your own computer? I wonder if it's my system here in network or if it's Canvas that's having a problem. Tell me if you're able to bring up Canvas and go into the class, because it's just not coming up. I'm not able to go into the class. You're able to, Charlotte, you were able to go right into the class? Hmm. Class is just not coming up for me. I'm wondering if I'm seeing that it's paused on CloudFront, waiting for CloudFront.net is what mine is saying. Hmm. Hmm. You were able to get into it. Okay. Huh. All right. I'll wait for just one more minute here. I wanted to bring up the, it's just not coming up. Let me do this. I'll stop sharing my screen. And Charlotte, would you share your screen? I kind of want to I want to go into the class, but mine's not coming up. And so if it's coming up on yours, I'd like to, let's see. I'll try to hit a different router here. See if that helps me at all. Just give me 1 second and see if I hit a different router, go back to the router that I was first on. Okay, I went to a different router and I was able to see that, see the class. Okay, so we got yours too. It switches. I can switch routers, but it seems like Zoom doesn't seem to care. Is that your question, Eric? The recorder kept going because I think it's recording locally to my computer. There still seems something wrong with my other router. Okay, I have it here, so let me go ahead and share mine because it seems like it's working with this other router. Came up a second ago. It's there. It's very slow. See, that came right up. It came right up. Okay, good. All right, well, I'm going to proceed here. Seems like some things come right up, and then others, it's still spinning there. Do you see the discussion on the screen right now? Okay, good. Okay, so here's the discussion question. And it's basically saying you're looking for JavaScript code snippet tutorials that are not already in Animate interface like GoTo and Play. So two tutorials on creating animations, and list the title of the tutorial, put a link to it. And this is open now so that individuals can post their own links and view what they what's out there already posted by the class. Okay, so here's an example. And what I want to do is explain to you how you could take advantage of the code in this. All right, so here's what I want to show to you. If you saw what I just did, I clicked on View Code, and here the HTML section. This is a separate file altogether, the HTML, and here it's got the CSS here. HTML5, that's all that is the HTML5. And there it has the ID for the canvas. There's the CSS that would be at the top of that HTML. And then finally the JavaScript. And so this would be the interactivity here. Now, the way this example is shown, these files it doesn't show you how to create the files separately unless you watch the tutorial. So this is saying this is the HTML, this here is the CSS that would go at the top of the HTML in an inline internal CSS style sheet, or it would be you could separate it out into its own separate file and include that in the HTML. And then this here is the JavaScript, which also could be in a separate file that gets included by the HTML file. But as you can see, it doesn't talk about any of that when you look at this code here. Now, one of the things I also want to point out is when you use your Adobe Animate and generate the output, when you publish that file, it will not be generating CSS. It generates the HTML5 document and JavaScript files associated with it. So, so here we're dealing with the fact that here's a sample that has CSS involved. Let me see if there are any questions. No questions. So there's an example. So if you go to thecodeplayer.com, so here is an entry point for HTML5, CSS3, JavaScript animations, one of which is the one we just saw. If you scroll down and keep scrolling, you'll see it will load more as you scroll down. And see, it's paused right now. Puts up more to show you. Website's slow. Or my connection's slow. Still loading. There's this one right there. So you might ask yourself, how do I take advantage of all these tutorials? And as I just mentioned, they come providing 3 types of coding files: the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript. And you're thinking, well, how? That's great, but how do I incorporate that into my project? That's the big question. And that's where this step is just a little bit tricky, because number one, we're not asking you to do that. If you don't, number one, it's not a requirement to do this. To find something you like and then say, oh, how do I figure out how to? That's not a requirement. In other words, the project itself could be done with just code snippets. Okay, hopefully that will help everybody. You're not required. It's not a requirement that says don't use code snippets that are built into Adobe Flash that for your project. This assignment this week is simply saying, for the discussion, why don't you go look out there and find other examples of animation. So I don't want you to get freaked out, Melissa, to think that you're expected to incorporate this. I'm going to try to help you understand how to do that, but this is just an exercise in seeing what other tutorials are out there. These are not ones that have been generated from Adobe Animate. These are ones that have been coded from scratch by individuals, and they're showing you how they did it. So these are already advanced enough for that. Hopefully I'm saying things that will help you a little bit. Melissa, is that helping you feel a little bit better about the expectations? Okay, good. Yeah, I was afraid that this step might be a bigger step than was necessary. I just wanted to just make sure you didn't feel required to incorporate these. So this is kind of an exercise in seeing what the more advanced animators are doing from scratch. Yes, I do. In fact, that's what I'm counting on that, Melissa. Melissa asked the question, do you think we can do our whole project with code snippets from Animate? And my answer is yes. And that actually is my intent. I do not at all intend to set the bar on using any of these examples that we're finding, because that's a pretty high bar to set. So hopefully that helps relieve you that the differentiating between this discussion, the goal of this discussion, and the what's out there. So let me see if I can just pick another one. See, they have a lot of animation using CSS3. Here's one even using jQuery, which is another code library, interactive code library, different than Create.js, but comparable. And so these examples on this website are, there's jQuery there. That's kind of like Create.js library. The CSS3. See, a lot of these animations are using CSS3. And remember what I said about HTML5 and CSS3 kind of broke open the ability to animate. HTML5 brought to the scene the canvas element, and then the CSS capitalized upon that, the canvas element, and incorporating like I said, here we have the CSS here, which uses the canvas element. Here's the HTML5 This is a CSS referencing the canvas element. And then down in here, we have the JavaScript that that also accesses the canvas element. Now, I'm just going to spend just a minute describing this code. Now, my goal is to just help you start to see the picture of what's going on here. My goal is not to tell you, set the bar, you have to incorporate this. I just want you to not be too afraid of this code, and that's my goal here. So HTML5, this will be in the HTML document, one document that ends with .html. This is the CSS. It could be in its own separate file, a .css file, or it could be put at the top of the HTML document. Again, this is all done manually with an editor. Don't expect Adobe Animate to generate this, because it won't. It's not designed to output CSS animations. It's designed to output JavaScript-based animations and interactions. That's the extent of what Adobe Animate does. So don't expect it will generate something dependent upon CSS. And then here, this is JavaScript. This could be edited and put at the top of your HTML document, built right in, just as this can be built right in as a CSS script. This is built right in as a JavaScript script that can be included at the top. It's separated by script tags inside the HTML, or you can separate out into its own file, a .js file, that then is included in the HTML document. So let's just go high level here through this code, just so that you're not totally afraid of it. This is just a variable. This is JavaScript variable declaration. There's the name of your variable. This document, remember how in the other JavaScript examples we saw in the code snippets, we saw the usage of the word this? We would see this dot and then a function name. That's similar to what's going on here. JavaScript in this context is actually referring to the HTML5 document. And so this is the object. The document object is really the HTML5 document. And then there's a function call. And it's basically saying, give me a pointer to the thing called C in your HTML5 canvas document, in our HTML5 document. So what it does is the browser says, okay, that's a JavaScript call. We've got JavaScript built into us. Remember, the browsers out there have been processing JavaScript for like 20 years. So they kind of get how to process JavaScript. And so this function is built into the, just as Adobe Animate has incorporated the Create.js library, so has the browser incorporated the programming language JavaScript, and some of it's got some of its own functions to respond to JavaScript. So we're saying, hey, HTML5, hey, browser, inside you, can you go look for the thing that the person called C? They identified it with the letter C. And look at that right there. There it is right there. So the browser comes back and says, yeah, I got something inside of me, inside my HTML5 document, which happens to be identified as C, and it happens to be the canvas tag. So this now is saying, okay, I'm now that. I have now become that. And now anytime we use this, we're actually referring to the canvas tag. And so this next call here is now C, which refers to the canvas now, dot get context, get me a two-dimensional context, that's 2D, and that puts that into this variable. And now it says, I want the height of my canvas to be here's a window, that's referring to the display window in the browser, the property called inner height that's associated with your browser, and I want the canvas, and this is basically dynamically setting the stage of your animation, and it's happening at real time. It's saying, okay, the canvas thing, that's my drawing board. I want you to associate, you're the stage now, and I want I don't know what just happened there. I want you, my screen just kind of vanished there. Not sure why that did that. Can everybody see my screen? The code? Can you still see the code on the screen? Can you see it now? The code? Okay, good. All right, my goal in doing this is just to kind of ease it off of you so that when you get these code snippets and tutorials, that you're not totally unaware of what's going on. You're not expected to code this. You're not expected really to understand it thoroughly. I'm just kind of giving you a little bit of this is what it's doing. So making the canvas full screen. So the inner height, the window is the browser has a thing called a window. It has its own display area. And it's got an inner height property associated with it as well as an inner width. And now we'd say our stage has the value. We set the stage height to that value and the stage width to that value. Here we've got a variable with all these Chinese characters in it, and that's what it actually uses as what it displays here as it goes down. So I'm not sure exactly what, this actually says, okay, that long array, what we want you to do is to call this function, and what we want you to do is to separate it out into individual cells of an array rather than one single string. So it creates like cell 0, cell 1, cell 2, cell 0, cell 1, cell 2, cell 3. So that's necessary because when it begins to write it, it needs to write one at a time rather than the entire string of characters at a time. So the font size is a variable set to 10. Here we say the columns are the width divided by this font size. So there's the width. That's the width associated with the canvas. Remember, we set that up further up. You know, we gave our canvas our stage a width. Okay, and then here we have an array called drops, one per column, and so it's going to create an array for each of these coming down, one at a time. And so here's a for loop where it goes from x is 0, while it's less than columns, it increments it and drops sub the counter x set equal 1. So it's initializing the drops array. So that's considered an array of drops, and to 1. And here's the draw function. So this draws everything that you're seeing as it's going down. And so it's a loop, and it sets the font and the fill text to the drops, and the font size is multiplied by that, so it's actually calculating all the way across here and so on. Does a loop, the length of the drops, it'll go that many times, incrementing I, and it paints it out. I'm looking for a place where it kind of fades it out. Let me see where that is happening. Full text, full style. I'm looking for how it fades it. Let's see, full text drops random height. This is, I think, a random number. Let's see. So that's the random. The random is placing it across here. Oh, it makes it look like I'm looking for a fade of it as it goes down, but it's actually writing the entire line straight across, and it fills the entire line with these different amounts of clarity of the character, and it's writing a line at a time, and it looks like it's scrolling. Anyways, that's a quick explanation of that function, that animation. Very quick. So one thing I would recommend is to do some searching on the internet with some of the Animate, the code snippet library, because what we just looked at was all custom code. There were a couple JavaScript routines that were used, but what we looked at was not Create.js examples. And if we look at the, let me see if, so I want to give you some more ideas on what to search for your discussion. The Code Player website is okay. The negatives, it talks about CSS, coding, number one. Number two, it also interacts, some examples interact with a different JavaScript library than the Create.js library that's built in Adobe Flash. For example, you saw the reference to JavaScript. It's a second negative. So some of the things you can do is to look at the code snippets, look over the ones here that you might be using in your current, some of the ideas that you have. And I realize the discussion question is asking you to find something over and above what, like the go to and play. And I get that. What I'm trying to do is give you some ideas on how you can go searching for examples that are exclusive to the Create.js library of codes, because those will be something that can tie right into your animation if you choose to use them. So the go to and play, that was this one here. Oh yeah, we forget we have to, in order to bring up the code example, we have to have an object here. That is a symbol with a name. And it's got to be selected, which I did. Oh. That was a movie clip. Selected. I did that. Say, you can watch me do this. it seems like it's got a bug. It says instance of test 4, and yet I need to have it have its own name. So in order to get that. So here's the example of the function that is an example of what we want it to be like. So you can see here the go to and play. So so how do you go find examples? So you can take go to and play and search for that. Adobe Animate tutorials. Adobe Flash would even do if as long as it's HTML5 canvas. My internet's being a little slow. Why don't you try that while I'm waiting for this to come back from Google. Okay, so there are some videos there. You don't want ActionScript in this example. You're focused on the HTML5 Canvas and JavaScript ones. You can just use the word minus ActionScript up here, and that will filter out any ActionScript based tutorials because we don't want ActionScript. Just by putting the word the letter minus before it will filter those out from your examples. The animate is even an optional one here just because it was just this most recent release that we got. Yeah, we don't want edge. So I would subtract edge from that. Animate could potentially be optional just because there might not be a lot of examples out there yet. Could add Flash, HTML5, JavaScript, all of those. Exclude ActionScript, exclude Edge. Flash is okay just because we've had a couple releases of Adobe Flash CC 2015 that had HTML5 Canvas project files in it. My goal is to find some code and tutorials. They could use go to and play. I'll copy and paste this into the chat in case you want to search for it. Let me share, let's see. Can you tell me what's on the screen right now? All right, okay. All right, so this is
I believe, a very good place to start with your discussion. As I looked at the other search string we were using, I had an idea to improve upon it. So let me type this into the chat. And okay, can everybody see that? It says site:createjs.com space tutorials. Now, in Google speak, what I'm telling Google is give me all the tutorials that are available on the website that is createjs.com. And so instead of it going out in the universe of the internet and bringing back things with the word tutorials, it's going to filter out everything except anything that is marked as tutorials on the CreateJS website. And the great news about this is that when you search for that, everything that you discover can be incorporated into your Adobe Animate output file or your Adobe Animate code snippets, and because it'll be okay with having that in it. Those other examples that we were looking at that have CSS, that wouldn't have flown, and to have to also have HTML5 that was code dependent on the HTML5 canvas. Those are all kind of make that a harder. All those that example, that matrix example, screensaver example, makes that harder to use. These, however, are going to be built for the CreateJS library, which is built into Adobe Animate. So, does everybody understand what I'm saying? So these are good examples. Each of these hits are very, very good examples because they are just CreateJS. There's no CSS involved. Can you see my screen? Does it show Google returning all these different tutorials? They all have createjs.com. Is that what you see on the screen right now? Okay, good. All right, so these are better. Now, if this is a really good list to go from, very dependable. Now, if you want to open it up a little bit, remove the site : from that and remove the .com, leaving just that, CreateJS space tutorials. Now you're going to open up Google to find anything that talks about CreateJS, and which is a tutorial. And it's not going to just restrict itself to just the createjs.com website. So here you'll see createjs.com website, but you'll also see, here's another one. Here's one from Toots Plus. And the good news is it is CreateJS, and it's a HTML5 Pong game. Now, even though these aren't created from people on the createjs.com website, they are examples using CreateJS. So this would be another example of something that could be used by in your project. So don't worry about the fact that these tutorials are being presented by websites that are not createjs.com. They are using the library that comes from createjs.com. Here's some more Toots Plus. Here's a lynda.com. I noticed this one in the result set. Look at that. Right there, built into our lynda.com is a CreateJS tutorial. That's a very good link and very good hit right there to help you. Here's Go To and Learn, different website with tutorials, and they're talking about Easel.js. Now, don't worry about that, because here I want to show you that Easel.js, here we're at createjs.com, and Easel.js is one of the sub-libraries that is part of the Create.js all-encompassing library, because Create.js has modules in it where they've organized the objects and the functions according to general functionality. This is easel functionality. This is the tweening functionality that's built into the library. This is any sound, if you're accessing sound. And so they've organized their library into different modules. And Easel.js is one of those. When you click on that, you come to this page. If you click getting started, you can see some of those tutorials. But right here, if you click on docs, don't worry about download because it's already built into your Adobe Animate. You can download the code, but that's really for the individuals who are coding from scratch. And we're going to you have the option of including some of this code into your Actions panel code, and it'll be okay. So here's all the list of all the functions that are in the Easel.js module of the Create.js library, which is included in Adobe Animate. So it's a lot here, you can see. Those are all the Easel.js, all the documentation, and they give little examples here of how to use it. Now, keep in mind the context that these tutorials come from the point of view of they're not talking to you as an Adobe Animate user. They're talking to you as though you were coding from scratch. So you kind of have to give them a little leeway in that conversation, because Create.js is a library that stands by itself. It doesn't need Adobe Animate. It's Adobe Animate that needs Create.js. And so this conversation and the tutorials that you see out there, these here, are given to people who don't necessarily have Adobe Animate or Adobe Flash. These tutorials are really coming from the point of view of, hey, look what you can do with this library and start coding from scratch. But again, don't worry about that, because we kind of have a leg up with using Adobe Animate with the code snippets, and that it's a nice environment. You don't have to worry about a lot of things with Adobe Animate, how it's structured. So keep in mind, these people are not talking to Adobe Animate users as much as they're talking to just build from scratch people. So here's the Easel.js module, and then here's the Tween.js. You click on the docs, and here's those. Remember how we talked about ticker? That's that clock that's constantly ticking. Here's the event itself, object. Okay, and then up here is this next one, the sound module. Click on docs. You can see some of those examples here with sound. Adobe Animate's going to be putting in their code snippet interface, the panel, just a few of these, just to kind of give you enough to start you going. Preload, docs, and this is what the preloader, all the functions that the preloader allow you to do. So very advanced, very comprehensive, but not necessary for your project. But pertinent to the discussion this week. So, let's see, I think I just clicked on, did I show the code, play the sound. So this is really would be possibly good enough for one of your discussion posts, because when you click on getting started, and here they've got code and play the sound. So here's an example of movement. So these are, this getting started link links to by each of the modules. This one shows Easel.js. Then if you come down here, here's Tween.js. So this one web page is showing examples, getting started examples from each of the modules. Here's the Sound.js, Preload.js. So interactive, click load image. So this createjs.com getting started could be used for this week's, but I guess once someone uses it, then we have to. If someone's already used the link in their discussion, you'll have to find another link, because that's one of the stipulations for this week's discussion, that they only want you to use one, or each one once. Okay, Eric asked the question, Create.js is to animate, as HTML is to Dreamweaver. Let me rephrase that. It's a good stab. I would say JavaScript in general is to animate as HTML is to Dreamweaver. So animate, but maybe because animate can really accommodate just regular JavaScript calls. If you remember that the game that the interactive Hangman game, if you recall, that the week one, the very first lecture, we played the game, the Hangman. That was a create HTML5, or that was a Canvas document that was. Let me bring it up here. File, new, and then templates, click there, and then HTML5 Canvas, and then here's the sample puzzle game right here. And so if you look at the timeline, you see these letter A's, that means that there is code there. So we go into the panel, the actions panel, and click on that. And so here's some code. Now, the reason why I want to bring this up to you is because I want you to realize that Adobe Animate can really accommodate just plain JavaScript coding, which is all that right there. Let's see, that right there. This right here is a call to the function to stop the timeline. This right there is a call to one of those functions. In fact, this is, you won't, some of these calls are like built into Adobe Animate that even weren't needed, or Create.js doesn't have the functions that we can use in Adobe Animate are not limited to just the Create.js functions, because if we searched for the go to and play, I'm going to guess that go to and play is an example of one that is not. I was just looking to make sure that this just a few minutes ago, but I don't see a search on there. I'm just going to go like this. I'm basically asking Google, you're going to find go to and play on this createjs.com website? I'm going to guess no. Go to and stop. It's sprite calls. Sprite class. Go to and stop. Instance. See, they have an example here. The sprite sheet class, okay, is where you got the sprite class extends display object. This here is a list of objects here. This sprite class right here, there's a relationship. It's kind of like a pedigree chart here, because the sprite class here is actually an extension of this. So like its parent is display object. What that means is everything that you find in the display object, you will, because sprite is a descendant of that, it is inclusive of everything that's in a display object, but it's got more to it. And that's why they define a new class. So when it uses the word extends, it says, hey, a sprite is one of these things, but it's actually even more. So the constructor, what that means is to create one. Here's the method. So I'm just giving you kind of an example of the breakdown of how this works. The sprite class. I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but give me 1 minute before I come back. So this definition, these are a list of objects that are built into the library, and each of the objects are actually classes. When you create one of these inside and you create an instance of that, it's really an object. Dynamically, you're creating an object of this type of class. And the properties and behaviors of that particular object is this set of methods here. And so all these things can come after the name of the object. So object dot add event listener, object dot, and it goes on. Each of these are function calls. And so if you are wanting to get into this, each of these would be function calls or behaviors of something of this class, or methods. Those are all same words, a function or a behavior or a method of this particular class. I'm kind of generally talking about object-oriented programming here. And properties, this is information. So these are function calls where they do code and do things. These are like actions. Properties is like information about that particular thing. So a sprite has properties. These are the properties of, or in other words, pieces of information. These are not function calls. These are pieces of information that go along with that particular object that you can query and find out. And remember how we do like this dot, or this dot property name frame rate, this dot frame rate, and that's how it is included in there. So there's a little bit of a tangent here, but I just kind of want to introduce you to how to read this library. These are objects. They are extensions of other. So if you click on the display object, this is like the parent of a sprite. Now, it doesn't have all the same methods and properties, but a sprite has everything that a display object has. So it kind of inherits all the methods and properties. This is what happens with object-oriented programming. You don't have to worry about all this, but I just want to help you get it. So this was a tangent that I went on when you asked the question about Create.js. You asked the question about Create.js is to animate as HTML is to Dreamweaver. So, and I showed you this example here, and then I jumped into this function here, and we went and found that as a function call. So circling back to where I was answering your question, I want you to understand that Adobe Animate can handle just strict JavaScript as well as make function calls into the Create.js library. So I don't want to say Create.js is to animate because Animate can handle the full JavaScript library, not to mention See, this is all JavaScript in here, just regular JavaScript coding. This is not Create.js. So somebody who knows JavaScript is doing JavaScript coding, and some of the function calls, there's a go to and stop. Some of the function calls are making calls into that library. Remove child, that's just a general Adobe Animate library call. So there, whenever you see some of these function calls, it's either a function call to one of their own custom functions that they create. This is how you can create a library of code. You take a copy of people's all the code here, set it aside. That's what they're talking about by creating a code library. So this is straight JavaScript. Some of this is a custom function that somebody's written, and so JavaScript is to animate as HTML Dreamweaver. But I'll have to go one step further, Eric, because Adobe Animate can handle 2 types of project files. In fact, 3 types of project files. Remember, Adobe Animate, we can create when we like you learned when you start off, you can create an action script. So you got to be a little bit careful, because Adobe Animate is now so powerful that not only can it deal with its older ActionScript 3.0 project files, which are just ActionScript, not JavaScript. So we have to be a little bit careful. If we say JavaScript is to animate as HTML is to Dreamweaver, we have to say something like JavaScript and ActionScript is to animate as HTML is to Dreamweaver, because Animate can handle both of those. In this context, it's just going to be ActionScript, but with this one here, it's going to be regular JavaScript. But we actually have to go even further, because Adobe Animate can actually handle calls into the WebGL library. So the WebGL is 3D graphics, and 3D graphics, a library. So the WebGL library is comparable to the Create.js library, but it's an extension. That, the reason why they're working with WebGL is because the Create.js library does not do 2D and 3D. So it's kind of interesting to see what Adobe has to go through in order to replace what Adobe Flash ActionScript files can do. They're having to go to great lengths to bring in this other code base, the sets of code bases like WebGL or Create.js, in order to replace the functionality that they had going for them with the ActionScript 3.0. So the Adobe Air, the Air platform is really kind of a rebranded Flash player for Micro for mobile devices. Under the covers, it's really kind of their way of doing that. So we won't talk about that right tonight. But so now I want to make sure I haven't confused you guys more. My goal has been to really calm your fears, give you some hints on the discussion. Calm your fears about what the expectations are for your project. I made sure you understood that you don't have to worry about doing the custom coding or making calls to the Create.js library that are not built into Adobe Animate. So can you kind of give me a little bit of feedback? Okay, great. Yeah. Yeah. And tonight we got the discussion covered. I think we're good there. And Wednesday night we'll get into the projects and assessment. Yep. And the first hour of Wednesday we'll get into the assignment. My goal was to get into that now, but I've taken more time. So we'll call it a night tonight, and then we'll get into the assessment the second half the hour, and also I'll have your everything graded and returned to you by tomorrow at noon. Any other questions? Can you tell me a little bit, give me some more feedback? You bet, Melissa. Charlotte, can you give me a little bit of a feedback, and Eric, about how you're feeling about this whole conversation, if you're encouraged, if you're feeling good about the discussion, things like that. Just want to get a little bit of a warm fuzzy before we call it a night. Okay, great, Charlotte. Okay, great. Awesome. I'm really happy. Thank you, three, for coming tonight. I really appreciate you being here. I look forward to our class Wednesday night, and hopefully this has been helpful. I think it has. And have a good evening. Good night.
I realized that the recording from my lecture last night didn't work for a certain segment. So I need to add more content to make, even though the class went from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., I need to add more content to this because I'm not exactly sure where the recording didn't work over the 2 hours. I just discovered that once I ended the signal, or the network came and went, internet, and so I remember I had a break, and then I had to stop. Anyways, I'm going to add some content to the end of the lecture just to get to the minimum standard of an hour and 45 minutes. So what I thought I would do is, at the end of the conversation yesterday, I discovered that this link here would work well for the discussions. And when I was doing some searching during the live lecture, I refined the search to this point. And the Create.js is the library that Adobe Animate includes. If you go down to the very bottom here, you can see right here, Create.js is sponsored by Adobe. This is the company that created it. You can see Microsoft also is using it. And so that's the library. These are the modules of the library. Each of these modules, when you click on them, will go to a list of objects that are in that library, or a list of classes that are in that library. And each of the classes have behaviors. An object of a particular class will have a set of behaviors, or in other words, capabilities or functions, and a set of properties. So that's how this library is all broken down. But if you click on the Getting Started, you click on each of these modules, there's a little Getting Started link. If you click on that, it comes to this page here. And you can see createjs.com Getting Started. If you come back, if we were to click on easel module and click Getting Started, we come to that same link, but offset by the easel.js. And so last night I went through this and showed you that there are, now here's the tween.js section. So if we came back here, went to the tween.js module, click Getting Started, jumps to the same web page, but then scrolls down to the tween.js. So as you can see, this Getting Started page has examples for each of the various modules. Getting examples. So what I'd like to do is to show you the correlation between what's created here in Create.js and what Adobe Animate creates for you. I'll show you the connection between the two, just to provide you a little bit of understanding and to help you get confidence in how to extend your animation in Adobe Animate. So that's where we're headed. My goal is to increase your confidence on how you can extend what's there available if you choose to, in addition to just using code snippets. So let's start off here with this module, the Easel.js. It's the first module of these 4 modules that are of that library. And let me just make sure I've got everything working just right. So here you come down and you see this. Now, the question I have for you is, what do you think this is? Are you looking at JavaScript here? Are you looking at HTML? Is it CSS? What do you think this is? Okay, you know, the answer is this is a line in the head section of the HTML document, the HTML5 document to be exact. It's HTML, but it's actually version 5 of HTML. So that's in the head section. Then we come down here, and here's the body section of the HTML document. And here is an attribute called onload. That is an attribute that says when this HTML document is loaded by the what? By the browser. So when this HTML document comes to the browser and it's loaded, we want you to immediately call this function. This is actually a call to a function. Now, this function is not written in HTML. It's written in a different language. What do you think the language is? See, HTML is just a markup language. It is not a programming language. It kind of looks like one, but it's not. The programming language that HTML uses is JavaScript. Okay? So this is a function call in the JavaScript programming that will also be found on this page. And this is the canvas tag that's come around since HTML5. This is the attribute ID, and this is the name of that canvas. You can designate it a name. This has to be unique on the web page that you're on. So this particular canvas, its nickname is Demo Canvas. That's what we're going to refer to it as. It has a width. This is kind of like a stage here, a width of 500 pixels, a height of 300 pixels. And there's the end canvas tag. So that's pretty simple. Then come down here, create a function called init, and append it to either the head or body. This is where we'll use Easel.js. So here we have a built-in tag. It's kind of like this tag. This one includes the JavaScript file. This one here is where the JavaScript is actually built right in. And it says append it to either the head or body. This is up in the head. This is suggesting we can append it after the body and just define it below. This is where we'll use Easel.js. Then define a stage by creating a new stage instance, passing in our canvas elements ID. This stage will hold all of our display objects and act as the visual container to our project. So the demo canvas up here, this is like a figurative whiteboard. And then here we're going to say create JS, that's this library. We're going to say create a stage from that canvas. So this is kind of the official way for Create.js to get connected to what's going on the HTML page. This is what's going on the HTML page because this is HTML world. This is an HTML tag. This is HTML world. This is basically HTML world. But we're going to draw a connection between the two right here. This is a function call to create.js.stage. And so we're gluing it together. We're saying make a stage from what you find out in the HTML document, which is called demo canvas. So we now bring that glue, we glue that in. It now becomes a stage. This is the variable. So this now represents that stage. So now JavaScript has now successfully made the connection between the HTML world, which is talking with canvas elements, and now the internal world of JavaScript, because it's kind of like you walk into a new realm. This programming, it's like walking into a new room in a house. We walk in the front room, we can just talk HTML. The browser's there making us happy, HTML and everything. But in order for us to get into the realm of JavaScript, we have to like take a little note from the front room, living room, which says, in this world, we talk HTML and we refer to the canvas as demo canvas. We take that with us. We walk into the next room, which is JavaScript. And here we talk JavaScript. And we bring with us a reference to what was in the HTML world, which is the demo canvas. We bring that reference with us into the dining room, and here we're going to be talking JavaScript, and that's what's going on right here. We bring with us that, and we walk in, and so now inside the dining room, when we refer to the stage, we're not going to be talking demo canvas, we're actually going to be talking this variable. So this variable is the representative that's coming in from the living room, and in other words, the HTML world, and bringing with it the name of the thing that's out there. And so now stage gets to represent inside the dining room while we're having a conversation in JavaScript, talking JavaScript language, we refer to the stage. So let's create a shape. First, we need a new shape instance. Then we can use Shapes Graphics API to give it color and bounds, position on the canvas with X and Y coordinates, and add it to our stage. So now we look over at the dining room table and we see a fellow called Circle, and we say, okay, Circle, we first of all, you were born by calling the library of routines, the great library of objects, and in particular, the object of the class of shape. And so that's how you came into existence. We're going to call it a circle here, but all you are is an instance of shape. This is actually called what is called a constructor with no parameters, and it's this is the constructor of the class shape. We reference it from the library. You say, okay, you're now a shape. Now you're just a shape, really. You're just an instance of a shape. That's all you are. Now, next thing that we're going to do is, because you're a shape, you actually have a property called graphics, or you have a property, and one of your property, the graphics happens to be, it also is an object of type graphics. I mean, that is the thing that you are. You have, as a shape, you have graphics, and so now these graphics actually also have behaviors because they're objects too. It's kind of like let's say you open up a car, an engine. You open up lift the hood, and you have the engine there. But the engine is actually made up of about 6 systems. You've got the cooling system and so on. Same thing here. Shapes have graphics. Engines have cooling systems. So given that all shapes have graphics, one of the behaviors of that graphic, or in other words, a function, is a thing called begin fill, and we pass a parameter into it, and so this is basically saying your fill is going to be this color, and then fills in and of themselves actually have behaviors. Draw a circle, And and these are the dimensions that we pass in, the point of origin and the radius. I'm quite sure. So those are the parameters there. So all that takes place. That kind of sets the stage for the fact that now you're just a shape, but now you're actually a circle. You're actually a bona fide circle. You used to be kind of like a mold of clay, but now we're giving you dimensions and so on, and a color. And so you're created. The next thing we do is, okay, circle, now that we've created you, we're now going to move you. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to take your X property. That's not a behavior. That's behaviors always have these parentheses in there for one or more, or zero or more parameters. So that's just a property because there's no parentheses after it. So it's not a behavior. So, and that actually stands for your X coordinate on the XY grid, where upper left is 0, 0. So now we say, okay, circle, move X, and so you're up here at 0, 0, and I'll move 100 pixels to the right. And then it says, now your Y coordinate circle, we want that to be 100. And so then you go 100 this way. So 0, 0 is up here, and so positive X goes over this direction to like you're at whatever, 1500. And 0, 0, Y, positive Y direction goes down this way. So let's say we're down to 800 down here. So if we go 100 this way, moving in the X direction, and then 100 this way, moving in the Y direction, we come diagonally straight down here to about this position right here. And that's what we just did. That's what we would do by doing this. And then we say, hey, we're at the dining room table, and we say, hey, stage, thanks for coming in from the front room. We're nice to have you at our table. And now we're going to associate with you this circle that we just have created here. And we're going to add that circle to you. And the stage says, thank you very much, circle, welcome aboard. I'm going to associate myself with you now. And so in the JavaScript world, the stage just happens to now show the circle on it. It's not just the stage, a blank white stage. It's now blank white stage with the circle. And the add child is how you associate this new creation, this new shape that you created. You associate it with the stage, and so bam, it appears. So we're sitting in the dining room, and then all of a sudden the stage now has this circle on it. And back in the HTML world, the HTML just kind of set up the name of the stage, but it's really the JavaScript world that's taking over now in the dining room. And now it's dynamically talking to the stage. Remember the stage, who the stage represents the canvas back in the HTML world. So we associated it right here, made the connection, gave it a new name, brought it into here. Now it's called stage. It's a full-blown instance of a thing called the stage. This is actually a constructor for a stage here. So this is an instance of that class. That's a constructor. And so now we refer to it, and we make the association of the circle, gets added to it. And that's how that works. Finally, we need to update our stage to display the shape we just added. So stage.update, this is when this does it under the hood. Here, this says, okay, now stage, we want you to kind of like peek out the window of the dining room and tell the world and show yourself to the world. And so this is the operation that actually makes it show on the stage. This does it under the hoods, and this is the guy that says, okay, now I got to show the world that I've got this circle. Voila, you should have a nice blue circle on your canvas. You're on your way to being an Ease.js Picasso. Show the code. Okay, so here is the HTML document. Here's that one line that referred to up there. This has to be there because it's actually referencing a whole JavaScript library. It's the this is a dynamic reference to this file. In fact, you can actually take this like this, copy it, and you can go right here, paste it, and watch what happens. There it is. Check that out. Guess what you're looking at? This is the JavaScript library that's available on their website that you reference dynamically, and what you'll see here in a minute that Adobe Animate will reference by itself. And here it all is. And it's basically this November 26th, 2015 version of the Create.js library. It's minimized. The min is actually why it looks so hard to read. It's because they have run this function, this whole library through a minimization function, and that's why this JavaScript is just so hard to read. And they do it because they pull out all the extra space so it doesn't take a long time by the browser. Let's see. I want to maximize a minimized JavaScript file. Let me see if I have an online unminify. There we go. Okay, paste your code here. So watch this. I'm going to copy all this. Command A, Command C, and now we're going to go, okay, paste it out here. Unminify. And let's see if it looks pretty. There it is. Check that out. Now you can read it. That's the same code without with carriage returns, because it was so smart. It knew right where carriage return just because of the syntax, so that you can read pretty easily. It's the same exact file. The browser doesn't care if it comes to it in this minimized, compacted format, or if it comes here. The reason why they like this one is because it actually it's less characters. The character returns take up characters, and so we pull those out. Any tabs, we pull those out. Any spaces, we pull that all out. And so it's a smaller file. It's like taking a balloon and inhaling all the air out of it. It's still a balloon. It just doesn't have all the extra stuff. White space. This is the file with white space removed. This is that same file with white space brought back in, and it knows exactly where to put all the white space just because of syntax and indenting. It automatically did that. So that's why it's a .min. That means you're getting the minimized version. I wonder if we just took that out, if we could get the full one on their website. We'll just see. Just try it out here. No, they don't even have it. So that's okay. That's cool. We don't need to worry about that. You don't need to worry about this. You don't need to read this. This is actually provided by Create.js. That is what Adobe Animate has integrated into their system. Now, here we are. Okay, so that is a reference to that. That was up here, right here. See that reference? So now you can see it in the context of the full document. So you have the HTML document. And then there's the head that I told you about. There's a reference to the script. Here is now we put the script we're still in the head. Okay, the head doesn't close till here. Remember how it says you can either put this inside the head or append it. So I kind of like keeping your custom JavaScript code right inside the head also. So you have another script function. So script function to include that includes the entire library. It literally sucks it all in. The browser pulls that whole thing in. When it processes this page, it brought in the entire file that we looked at a second ago, brings it all into memory. Then it says, oh, got one more function for you. This one we're going to define right here. And there's all the code that we went through. There's the stage, kind of setting the stage for, you're going to go into the dining room. You're going to represent demo canvas. Demo canvas isn't coming till down here, but we have to reference it here higher up in the JavaScript, in the head section where we define JavaScript. But so And here's the circle being defined. I mean, actually, it's just a shape here. Here we make it a circle. We relocate the circle. We associate with the stage. And here we say, okay, stage, go show yourself to the world. Go to the window there and show the world that this is what you now are. You're not just a white stage. You now are a white stage with a circle. So, and then down in here, now we get into the real the body of the HTML. And then this says, hey, browser, the second you load me as a document, as an HTML document, and this is what browsers do. They read HTML documents, and they actually process JavaScript too. They do both. So the second that you load me, browser, call this function, jumps right to here. So this is a JavaScript call right there, and it says, call this function. Then it starts doing all this just on the second that it loads. So the second that canvas shows up, it actually, remember that our representative went in the dining room, got the circle added to it. So that right when the browser renders this demo canvas, it's going to render the stage version of it, because all that took place. And remember who represents demo canvas in the dining room? It's stage. And so because demo canvas is being represented by stage, with the minute that we display demo canvas, because stage went and got all this updated to it, it too will show. I mean, the demo canvas will be rendered. So watch this. I'm going to just take this like this, copy it, Command C, and I could just go right into Dreamweaver, because this is just stuff that Dreamweaver can handle. And you guys have had Dreamweaver already. I'm going to create an HTML document, click Create, and I'm going to just copy that and paste right there. And there you go. It's rendered right there. See that? So that's dynamic. See, we could like even move this. Let's move this. See that? We just moved it. Let's move it way down. Maybe it's off the stage. Wonder why. Maybe it's my, oh, because my height's only 200. I went off the chart. I went too far down because my stage is only 200 high, so I went too far. So now I went down to 200, and I just got half of it. If I make this, watch this, if I make this bigger, we'll see the full thing. Height 300, circle is wide. There we go. Let's see, width is 500. Height is 300. Circle Y. I thought I would see it. You know, I think I may have encountered a bug because it's not showing anymore. There it's showing. Let me first do this. And now radius is 50, so if I go 250, okay, that worked. I might have encountered a bug there because it just vanished, even though I had a height that was high enough in this direction to accommodate it. Now you can obviously save this file out if you want to a document. Let's put our desktop sample. And then if we go out to our desktop and double click on it, desktop, double click on sample, there it is. So there it is. The browser has opened it and rendered it. View page source, you can see that's all right there, just like we had it. Now, I promised you that I would make the connection between animate and this code. So I'm going to do that. File, new, create a HTML5 canvas, click create. And now, without doing anything, I just want to do file, publish, and save as. Where did I put it? Okay, let me put it on my desktop. Sample 2. I'm going to put sample 2 so I don't overwrite the other HTML. So file, publish. Now let's go out and to the desktop, and there's our sample 2 right there. So this just got created. This is the file, the project file. I did a publish. It just generated that and that. So now you might say, well, why can't we look at the HTML inside Adobe Animate? Well, they don't let you look at that. The JavaScript is, you can look at it if you create actions and so on, but the output of Adobe Animate is really not meant, Adobe Animate is not really wanting you to go and edit these files because they're going to be overwriting them every time. So you don't want to get in the business of, oh, let's open this JavaScript file up or this HTML file up and let's make some changes, because Adobe Animate is going to say, hey, next time I publish, I'm overwriting whatever you write there. So, because I start from this and I generate these. Okay, so the reason why I wanted to show you that is I want you in Dreamweaver. Dreamweaver does, on the other hand, let you edit those files. But remember, the minute that we do, we walk away from, so I'm just going to go like this, click the sample to HTML. We are leaving the FLA world. We're now just saying, okay, thank you very much, Adobe Animate, for creating these files for us. We'll take it from here. Now that's taking your work into your own hands. And once you kind of start doing this, you're on your own as far as Adobe Animate is concerned. But I just want to show you this because I want you to see the correlation between this file that Adobe Animate just generated and this sample file that we went through with this example. So here's the connection. So this is just nodes, so we can just all tokens are represented by $sign in the template. You can write your code only wherever mentioned. So they're saying, they tell you here, write your code here, write your JavaScript code here, write your code here. They're kind of coaching you on where you can tweak it. But we'll just remove that comment, and we look between here. See, it's looking very similar here. This is actually unnecessary here. Oops. This line, browser kind of will already know. We don't need to go ahead and tell it. So you can see that's kind of unnecessary. We're comparing the two here. See, HTML head. The formatting is just a little bit different because this one's got a nice format. I don't know if we can change that. There's sometimes an add-in that will add on. So there might be an add-on that kind of, it's called like pretty HTML. That would nice format this a little bit differently, but don't worry about it. Okay, watch here. Look at this. Look at this. Okay, so we can take this out here. See that? There's the reference right there. Recognize that? Bam! There it is. Same line. And then this here. This is actually a reference to the JavaScript. So instead of putting it right here, like they've done, what they did is they put it into a different file. Same location, but they've included a different file. How do you look at that file? Just click on it right here. check this out. You can actually click on this file. If we click there, watch what it does. Bam, it brought it down. It's still minimized. So coming back to the source code. So here, and we could have done the same thing here, by the way. See, it's got it right there. Then we're in Dreamweaver. This is not part of your class. I'm just doing this to show you. You don't need to worry about Dreamweaver. I'm just helping you see the connection between the two. So there's sample. There's the code. Now this is the code that was generated by Adobe Animate automatically using what it knew from the library. Here's the code that we created. So let's see, back to the source code here. And here is the, they define something called canvas. There's their init function. Remember the init function? Remember onload call init. Here's some styling. Here's the canvas tag, the size of that, and so on. And so here, get element by ID. It's saying, hey, we want to see this one. They called it canvas, where in our example we called it demo canvas. So here it says, I want go get hey document, hey HTML document, give me the thing that you called canvas, and then here export root. I'm not exactly sure. That's doing something in the library. Sample2 is really a call in here. I have sample2, don't see it. So up back to this source code here. Stage equals, see there's going into the dining room. We're going to create the stage. This time we're going to pass the canvas. We're not just going to pack. See, before we passed this get element by ID canvas as is here. See over here. See we passed simple infill, grant demo canvas, create the stage, demo canvas. Here we create the stage. We pass in the object itself rather than the name of it. We just pass the object to the constructor. Add the child, export root. This is a little bit different, just slightly different than what we saw. And then there's our update. Go to the window and show yourself. And then we got the ticker here. Add event list from the tick. That's interesting. So remember, this is going to watch for the tick. And that's it. So this is the output of Adobe Animate with nothing on it. We didn't add anything to it. And I'm comparing to you what it generates with that example sample that we did. So if we took this here and copied this section right in here, we're just going to take the circle and we're going to bring it over into the thing that they generated here. We got new create, stage update, add child, export root. We're going to put it right in here. Paste that. Don't worry about the tab. And then click here. I'm expecting to see what's the size of our. So we got width 550. Let me just save it. I'm wondering about a bug. You know, the fact that we kind of had a bug issue, or we didn't see it showing up like when we saw it. I'm just going to save it and come back out to the desktop, and I'm going to double click on this and let the browser process it. See, it's not even there. Huh. View page source. It's got the circle. Shape. We're going to add the child. Update. Well, the stage isn't getting its value until down here. I think I got to put it in a slightly different location here. See, stage isn't really getting its value until afterwards, and I'm already right here. I added it to the stage before it even got defined. So let me take this addition and bring it down after it got added. Now let's try it. There we go. Okay. I was adding it to the stage that hadn't yet come into existence. So I had to move it down until after line 22 is when it came into existence. So I said, oh, by the way, got something to add to you. So not only did we add this thing that it generated, but also the circle. So that's what I just showed you, is a little bit how you can use Create.js to extend your animations. You can start with Adobe Animate, but here's the problem. What I just did is Adobe Animate's not going to like it that I just tweaked some output files that it just did. So I say you can do this. It's not until really you start creating you start bringing JavaScript into your code and you start using the library inside your code here, then we can start extending, because the JavaScript files, it will let us edit once we start working on those. I'll show you that on Wednesday. So anyways, I think I'll quit for now. I've gone way over time, so I'm going to stop, and we'll see you Wednesday night, tomorrow night.